Have you ever wondered how much one of these armies would cost? Well, that's what we're covering in today's video. Warhammer 40,000 or otherwise is an expensive hobby. We all know this. People borderline fetishize the fact. Some hobbyists love to talk about how much it rinses their wallet or how they spent too much money on Warhammer. I'm sure I've said that phrase before in a video, live stream, or when talking about the hobby at my local game store. But have you ever stopped to think or even look at how expensive a full competitive Warhammer 40k army is? After Worlds, which happened, I don't know, when I first started writing this video, it was like only a week or two ago. It might be like a month ago now. But after Warhammer World Championships had happened, I want to look at how much the average army cost. Coming from a perspective of where I play a lot of Magic, the idea of how much something costs to get into the game or the format is important. So today's video, I'm going to look at the 5 top placing unique faction armies. So what I mean by that is I've got the top first place Manichima's Chaos Space Marines and how much that costs to buy off the shelves, but then I don't look at any other CSM. I then go on to look at what the next Space Marine list is, then the next Necrons, and so on, and so on. For the first, I think it's 5 that I've done. And I've also got a bonus 6th, because Sisters of Battle were in there somewhere. I was just curious to how much they would cost. Before we begin, a couple of caveats to all this. I'm going to show you the bought from Games Workshop price, and then I'm going to give you a 20% deducted price. Because buying from Games Workshop is expensive. If you're buying models directly from Games Workshop, you're doing it wrong. Independent retailers can often mark the product down by 15, 20 or 25% from what a Games Workshop will sell it for. So thus I've landed a 20% deduction to figure out what you get this from buying it from a local game store or independent online retailer. Further to that, you can get things cheaper on eBay, secondhand, meat swaps and all sorts of things. There are cheaper ways to get hold of stuff. It's not totally easy, but if you want to go ahead and straightforward and buy all this stuff from a shop, that's the prices in today's video. Further to that, don't go buying any of these lists to get into competitive or even casual Warhammer. Buying an entire army is a good way to burn yourself out and never really get into the hobby. 40k as a hobby lends to you buying individual kits, building and painting them with love and care, and then moving on. Not wholesale buying stuff that you can't quite manage so your pile of shit gets too big. My world eaters that I bought a load of kits for are nowhere near finished. And lastly, before we jump into the pricing, I wanted to originally do a section where I compare the prices of these armies to decks in competitive games like Magic the Gathering, Flesh and Blood, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And similar, a world that I'm also very familiar with, but ultimately I'm not going to do that. I'm going to mention towards the end of the video after we've done all the pricing about hobbies and how expensive they are and why I think Warhammer's quite a good value proposition, even if the stuff's quite expensive. But the reason I'm not going to compare apple to apple is because they aren't. They're apples to oranges. You can play Magic the Gathering, for example, for pennies. You can buy like cheap shit online off of eBay and just play decks 60 card constructed with shit that's not worth anything. Warhammer, on the other hand, if you're not proxying everything with matchboxes and Coke cans, is going to cost you a set amount of money to get into. Hell, these competitive armies are 2,000 point armies, and the idea in Warhammer is to get to 2,000 points to be able to play. So these competitive armies aren't far off what an army in Warhammer just costs on the whole. What I'm saying is that competitive card games, the prices balloon because cards become worth money in the secondary market. And for better or for worse, the majority of Warhammer models just stay at their MSRP or get around 30% knocked off when they go to second hand. Army 1. Chaos Space Marines. Manichima's first placing army involves 3 Chaos Lords and 3 squads of 5 chosen to go with them. A quick point here, each of these Chaos Lords is £19, while these 5 men, each of them is £32.50. The point I'm getting at here and pointing out for the rest of the video is that characters hyperinflate the price of armies more so than vehicles or squads do. We've got 3 squads of 5 Legionnaires for actions and holding objectives. 3 Rhinos to ferry those chosen and Chaos Lords around so they can beat the shit out of people. 1 singular Forge Fiend for pew-pewing. And then we come to the real crux of the expense here. We've got 3 full squads of 16 Accursed Cultists. Bear in mind that Accursed Cultists come in boxes of 8, and thus to make a full squad of 16, you must buy 2 boxes. Each box is £32.50. Each one of these 3 squads without upgrades is £65 each. But wait, there's more. We've got 2 squads of Dark Commune to add to it all. The Dark Commune are character units that can be attached to these Accursed Cultists, each running up to £32.50 themselves for 5 character models. And lastly, the cuddly toy of all Chaos lists right now, a single squad of Nurglings. If bought directly, this is one of the more expensive armies at £679.20. Meanwhile, if we were to deduct 20% from that, you can get it for around £543.36. The special thing about this army is that it does have 3 characters and 2 character units, plus these rather expensive modern kits. These are Cursed Cultist kits that are a little bit on the pricey side, honestly. £32.50 is kind of par for the course for a squad of 5 men, so the fact that we get 6 in a Cursed Cultist box might make it good value by Games Workshop standards. Either way, CSM is a pricey army right now if you want to play Cursed Cultist spam. And that's another point to observe here with what we're seeing, is that competitive armies will look to spam the best thing. So if the best thing's expensive, it's going to hyperjack the cost of your army. Next up, we've got the good old-fashioned traditional Space Marines. There's an interesting one here that this army is probably cheaper if you get it all off eBay than any of the other armies here. Or there's a bigger deduction because there's a lot more Space Marine shit floating around because everybody fucking loves Space Marines. 1 Primaris Apothecary Biologus. 6 Aggressors, that's 2 boxes of Aggressors. Marnis, Calgar, and his Honor Guard, and Uriel Ventris. Then we've got 2 boxes of Centurion Devastators. Centurion Devastators, for 3 of them, are £50 right now from Games Workshop. I have no fucking idea why they're so expensive. I've never built the kit and don't own any, and I've wanted some for a while, but I've always aired off of them because they're so expensive. Can someone tell me why Centurions are so expensive? That means in order to field a squad of 6, as we see here, you're going to have to pay a whopping £100 for 1 squad of 6 Centurions. I guess we're lucky that 3 squads of 6 isn't the meta. That'd be £300 for 3 squads of 6 men. 1 squad of Company Heroes. 2 squads of Eradicators. And 2 squads of 6 Inceptors. They come in boxes of 3, so if you want to buy a squad of these, it's £70 for 6 men. It's quite dear. I guess around £11 to £12 per model is not the most expensive thing in the world. When you start to break it down like that, it's hard to say. Either way, price aside, Inceptors are phenomenal right now, and they're easily my pick for one of the best units, if not the best unit, in the Space Marine Codex. Of course, multiple of the sub-factions available within the Codex. If you don't own Inceptors, I'll try getting some on eBay if I were you. 3 squads of 5 Scouts. Now, I've put these down at £35 each, because that's the old price. But bear in mind, there's a new kill team coming that will probably push the price of these up a little bit, so you were looking on secondary markets here to try and find the old models. And then the equivalent here of a cuddly toy is the Calidus Assassin, 1 singular lowly assassin. This army is £623.50 on the Games Workshop website, which means if we take our 20% off, it's £498.80 when it comes to looking at it from non-Games Workshop sources. It's only squeaking around £40 or £50 cheaper than Chaos Space Marines. That's pretty crazy. Like I said, Scouts are everywhere. There's an abundance of them on eBay. And other things like Aggressors can be found in the easy-to-fit versions, although if you want the bolt ones that you're meant to play, you have to do a lot of kit bashing there. That's actually a bad recommendation. Don't do that. Next up, we have everybody's favourite metagame-defining army, the Eldar, with an Autarch, an Avatar of Cain, a Farseer, a Fugan. Just so you know, the Fugan model came out in 1994, which makes it 30 years old. It makes it older than around 50% of my audience. 1 Spirit Seer and 5 Wraith Guard to go with it. A squad of Harlequin troops and the Harlequin Troop Master, which comes in 1 box, to be fair. So that's pretty decent. A clown car for the clowns to fly around in, a transport for the rest of the Eldar with a Wave Serpent, our first entry from Forge World here with 2 Hornets, each of them costing you £48. How the fuck is a Hornet cheaper than a box of 3 Centurions? It's crazy. 2 Night Spinners for more pew pew. That's a lot of shooting here. There's so much shooting. And then 2 squads, 1 Swooping Hawks and 1 Eldar Warp Spiders to allow you to play the mission. The Swooping Hawks that we see here are from 2000 and the Warp Spiders are also from 1994, making this easily one of the oldest model line armies in this whole list. Also, Fugan is not available on the website for Games Workshop right now, so you have to buy it secondhand. Because your models are old, it's only going to cost you £507 from Games Workshop. That's with me arbitrarily saying that Fugan's going to cost you 25 quid on eBay. And if you reduce that by 20%, it's £405 from independent retailers and secondary market prices. As Eldar get range updates though, with Striking Scorpions coming in 10th, it means the model line will get more expensive because that's what happens. So Eldar won't be this cheap for long. What about the robots? Well, we've got a Catacomb Command Barge, a Chronomancer, a Luminor Xeris, the best model in the entire range in my opinion. It's gorgeous. Imatech the Stormlord, Oricam the Diviner, 20 Necron Warriors, and another 20 Necron Warriors, a Canoptek Reanimator, 2 squads of Crypto Thralls, Murder Buckets as they're colloquially named, 1 squad of Melee melee Triarch Praetorians, a Ghost Art, one Cryptek, also known as a Technomancer in this list, and of course a cuddly toy in the Transcendent Catan. Bear in mind the Necron Codex just came out, so this list is already out of date as of me filming in terms of what would be meta at a comp level. The Transcendent Catan is now worse because it can't take a certain relic, but all the other Catans got a 5-up film and got better. So you can replace the rather cheap Transcendent Catan in this list for one of the more expensive models, like the Void Dragon or the Night Spinner, the Nightbringer. This is also an interesting list to look at because Crypto Thralls and the Triarch Reanimator come in one set called the Necron Royal Court, which means you've got to spend £75 to get 2 of the 4 Crypto Thralls and 1 Reanimator, and you got a spare Plasmancer and Scorpec Destroyer Lord. I mean, then they've got to somehow source some more Crypto Thralls. For that reason, I looked up how to get them individually on eBay. 40 for the Reanimator and 30 for each of the sets of Crypto Thralls. God, the names are all too similar. So I did the thing that made them a little bit cheaper when buying it all. This army is £530 from GW, which then we knock off the 20% that we're talking about from other retailers. It's £424. Slightly dearer than Eldar, but considerably cheaper than both Chaos Space Marines and Space Marines. The last one we've got here of the top lists, before we do a little novelty one, is the Death Card. 3 Biologist Putrefiers at £19 a pop, 2 Foul Blightspawn at £19 a pop, and then 30 2 5s and 2 10s of Plague Marines, which, by the way, they come in boxes of 7 for £35. So basically you got to buy 5 boxes of 7 to be able to build 30. Coming to £175 of Plague Marines, 3 Plague Bush Crawlers, 3 Rhinos to ferry all your Marines around and help them get close and throw grenades, 3 squads of 3 Nurgling, and then we're souping in 3 War Dog Brigands, which come in sets of 2 for £55. So you actually end up buying 4 of them if you're only fielding 3 of them. This army comes to £657 on GW's website. Oh, it almost beat Chaos Space Marines. And the 20% discount that we're using arbitrarily is £526 if buying from non-Games Workshop sources. That makes Chaos Space Marine the most expensive, followed by Death Guard. Then we've got Space Marines in 3rd place, Necrons in 4th place, Eldar being in 5th place in terms of how expensive they are, which makes one of the best armies in the game right now, one of the cheaper ones to buy into. A bonus round here, we've got this list of Sisters of Battle. We've got a Magifier, a Junif, a Morven Val, a Palatine with a Blade, which probably involves a little bit of kit bashing actually, a Celestine, 3 squads of Battle Sisters, 2 Immolators, 1 Retributor squad with 4 Multi-Melters, which is more kit bashing because it only comes with 1 melter in the box, meaning you have to procure 3 melters through 3D printing or buy an extra box of Retributors or whatever. It's expensive to build Rets, it really is. 2 Cascaders, 2 Singular Mortifiers, a Paragon Warsuit squad, 5 Sephirim, and Novitiates. 10 of them, £666.50, which makes it £533.20 on the secondary market. And one more bonus, these are obviously competitive lists, which are quite expensive, or at least if you want to play the best sweatiest thing you can in 2,000 points of Warhammer 40k, this is the kind of price the things are going to be. But they aren't obviously the cheapest option. There are cheaper ways to get these things through deals and secondary market and secondhand and similar. For example, if you buy half of the Leviathan box on eBay right now for, at time of writing, it's going for £100, you get yourself a Christmas box for the Space Marines, £140 from GW. Of course, that can be knocked down to around £120 from an actual game store. Annoyingly, I was writing the video before the Christmas boxes come out, and now they're out, and this box is probably unavailable again. 1 Repulsor Executioner tank, which is a very fun model to play in your army, is actually quite strong, even if not the most competitively viable thing. And a Dark Angels Combat Patrol, which gives you a 2nd Dreadnought and some of those wonderful Inceptors. And this will cost you around £391 directly from GW, but like I said, it's £312 if we knock the 20% off. That makes it just shy of £200 cheaper than John Lennon's Space Marine list from the World Championships. It's just going to prove that if you buy smartly and use box sets and similar, you can get an army for a little bit cheaper. So what did I find out from all this? Well, I found out that the most competitive armies and sweatiest armies are around £500, which is actually cheaper than I thought it would be. I don't know why I expected these armies to come out more expensive than that. For the record, the average standard deck at the moment for Magic, it really ranges. The cheapest decks are 160, 170, right up to £500 for the dearest. Pokemon's going to run you between $60 and $100 if you look at some of the comp lists there. And again, Yu-Gi-Oh! Can range from 200 to 800 when I was looking. I didn't want to go into the weeds of how much each of these were, Warhammer. It's more to point out that Warhammer armies are comparable to competitive card game decks, with Pokemon being the absolute outlier for how cheap you can play the game. I really wish other card games were as cheap as Pokemon, if I'm honest. But the reason I'm going to say that this is actually not that bad for Warhammer is that the value proposition is different. Because with Warhammer, you are buying stuff to build and paint. And if you enjoy either of those, or preferably both those activities, you're getting a whole second hobby. Secondary to going to a game store and playing, going to a tournament or a league and playing, you get to build and customize your models and paint them, which is an exercise that I find borderline zenful in terms of relaxation. Of course, on top of that, there's the other flip side of that. If you don't want to build or paint, and you buy a £500 army, you don't just sleeve it up and play like you would with cards, the other world that I'm familiar with. That's why I'm comparing so much to cards, by the way. Instead, you've got time and energy investment to get the army ready. I appreciate that for some people, that's not really it. And of course, most people don't buy armies wholesale like this, although I do know a few individuals that have. It always boggles my mind that they do this, normally with the support of someone else or a team to build and paint it for them. Really, what I wanted to do was try and compare it to like the onboarding, or at least the comp or high level areas of other war games like Song of Fire and Ice, or even other Games Workshop stuff, Horus Heresy and similar, or comparing it to Bolt Action and things like that, and the skirmish games too. But ultimately, I don't really understand the weeds of how to build armies in those games yet, so that wasn't a thing I could easily do with this. I hope you found this at least a little bit eye-opening as towards the cost of playing a higher level of Warhammer. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Was this more expensive than you thought, or cheaper than you thought? And would you like to see more videos like this? Would you like to see the most budget, cheapest armies you can build up to 2,000 points for the lowest amount of money? Would you like to see me talking about the most expensive units, points per pound, like I did for the 9th edition a couple of years back? I'd love to do some of this content, but I want to know what you want to see in the comment section below. And if you want to see some more Warhammer content, both from a financial side, but also just from the gameplay side, the painting side, and how much I fucking love this game, then let me know by subscribing. Then subscribe to this video so you can see them in the future, obviously. And I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.